UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed commends President Buhari's zero tolerance for political violence.
President Buhari pledges deeper trade and security relations with the Netherlands.
Son of former chairman of Pensions Reform Task Team Faisal Maina makes bill on presumption of innocence.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss ongoing border closure plus launch of sex offenders register in the country.
A national database and register dedicated to naming and subsequently shaming rapists and sex offenders in the country has been launched by the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons. It is the first of its kind in Nigeria, and I tell you, I'm excited about that because Nigeria has taken that step in the right direction.
There's no doubt about that, Rhoda, that millions of Nigerians, women, activists, and indeed several others, will be just as excited. And there was a petition that was floated in March urging the Nigerian government to implement a countrywide sex offenders registry to name and shame sex offenders everywhere they are in the country. And obviously, the government responded positively to that agitation.
And I tell you, Kingsley, indeed, it is commendable. It is commendable. The online register will contain information about people persecuted for sexual violence since 2015, and is also expected to publicly be accessible and help public bodies and law enforcement agencies conduct background checks to identify repeat sex offenders when they are arrested.
Now, some 15 non-governmental organizations are working with NAPTIP, that's the Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, on this particular project. And they have support from the British Council to monitor reported cases of sexual abuse and provide updates to the online register, at least every month.
And I guess this can be compared to that of the United States of America, where the National Sex Offenders public website is coordinated by the Department of Justice, enabling every citizen to search the latest information from all 50 states of America, including the districts of Colombia, Puerto Rico, and the native tribes for the identity and location of known sex offenders around them. The site will also help parents make sure there are no sex offenders living in their neighborhood.
That's very important. I'm sure you know there have been reported cases of sexual violation of minors, of daughters, of course, which will lead to incest, and indeed of aged persons. But most importantly, the register will help parents better protect their children. And you know, some weeks ago, we had discussed sexual violence and Good Morning Nigeria, and all the guests spoke against the rising number of rape and related cases. Plus, unfortunately, the failure of the legal system to mete out justice, as it were, expeditiously, protection of the victims, plus, again, stigmatization of the victims, coupled with their exposure to their alleged abusers. The unfortunate thing is that the majority of the sexual molestation and abuse cases are hardly ever prosecuted. But if this goes online now, they will have nowhere to hide.
And you know who else and of course, Kingsley, you know who else has nowhere to hide anymore. We're talking about the hundreds of suspected alleged smugglers and illegal migrants reported to have been arrested since their flank were known wide open by the Nigerian border closure. Most of all, the loopholes Nigeria is reported to be losing money from to smuggling and other vices have been blocked.
Now, the closure has also revealed that some of Nigeria's neighbors have not been compliant with the ECOWAS protocol on transit as it concerns Nigeria. Now, it turns out the Minister of Information and Culture was at the Seme border a few days ago, along with some other government officials, to assess the situation. And he has quite some interesting stories to tell Nigerians about what he saw during the course of the visitation, and they will join us later in the course of the program. It's on that note, we'd like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you as always live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're here at the Abuja Headquarters Studios. My name is Kingsley Usadolo.
And I'm Rhoda Anonam. As usual, we have our complimentary segments of the program, including the newspaper review, we have business and others. As always, the news comes first, and Comfort Amodu is here with us for the morning news. Comfort, good morning.
Good morning, Rhoda and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria, and here's the morning news. Nigeria and the Kingdom of Netherlands have pledged to deepen and expand the highly beneficial relations between the two countries in critical economic sectors, especially trade and investment and security. This is contained in a communique issued after the high-level engagement between President Muhammadu Buhari and the visiting Prime Minister of the Netherlands, Mark Rutte.
President Buhari and I will work hard to make sure that together we seize those opportunities. And I'm looking forward to that future together between the Netherlands and Nigeria. But can I also say that I look forward to working together with President Buhari, because we have really struck a relationship which I value.
The Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Amina Mohammed, has thrown her weight behind efforts by the National Assembly to put an end to hate speech phenomenon in the nation's bodied polity, describing it as desirable. Addressing journalists after an audience with President Muhammadu Buhari, the UN deputy described also appreciated President Muhammadu Buhari's zero tolerance for political violence in the country.
Condemning the recent loss of life of a woman in politics in Kogi State, the fact that he has shown zero tolerance for it and insisted on an investigation for us is important, especially as we start this week that looks at gender-based violence in all its ramifications.
And in another development, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Amina Mohammed, has said that more commitments need to be done in the support for the decade of action in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. She said the major concern is the uncertainties which climate change is causing the world.
The GA took some stock taking on the SDGs 5 years in. We are not where we ought to be. We're considerably off track across the globe. It's a global agenda. And as we come to Nigeria, we continue to advocate for the support for the Decade of Action, which starts next year, and that we look at the cooperation framework we have with you.
President Muhammadu Buhari has transmitted a letter to the Senate seeking approval of the 2019 and 2020 budget estimates for the Niger Delta Development Commission. The request is in fulfillment of Section 18 of the NDDC Establishment Act.
A very good sign that we are operating at the same frequency with the executive arm of government, that we are in a hurry to deal with matters of budget.
Meanwhile, the House of Representatives has resolved to investigate alleged security breach and violence during the November 16 governorship elections in Kogi and Bayelsa states.
There shall be no reference to any political party in the report, so that such is not used against whether it's PDP or APC in court, and we allow the courts to do their work.
In the meantime, President Muhammadu Buhari has tasked governors of all progressive Congress to devise practical ways of improving key infrastructure by exploring natural and human resources towards development of their respective states. This is contained in his message to the 3rd FGPGF Pali in Jos.
APC governors held the federal government progressive governors party on policy to review what has been achieved in the last few years from the last Fadi and what we do going forward.
Away from that, the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has admitted to bail Faisal Maina, son of the former chairman of the defunct pension reform tax team, Abdul Rashid Maina. Justice Okon Aban granted the bail application based on the constitutional provision on presumption of innocence on the part of the accused. That concludes the news highlights for now. Rhoda and Kingsley will be back to continue Good Morning Nigeria after this break.
The new edition of TV Guide is out, exclusively taking a look at the traditional television and new media. Are they comparable or complementary? Media industry players give perspective on the trends, progress, challenges, and the way forward. Find out on this compelling edition of TV Guide. Expository interviews with stars of the team within our space. Becky Madojemo of NTA, Utibe Umore of AIT, Nifemi Oguntai of TVC, and a host of others. TV Guide, your indispensable companion. Also feature Iya Medina.
I'm the CEO, managing director of Iya Medina Sister Restaurant. I choose to serve. Turn up your mouth. Let me finish.
A TV drama series on NTA. Let's get to meet the characters behind Iya Medina. This edition also presents exciting features on tourism, culture, entertainment, sports, health, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendors near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
To the 2019 Christmas celebration.
Radio Nigeria, NTA and Voice of Nigeria poised to set the tune for the season of joy with its annual festival of 9 lessons and carols.
Theme, Jesus in the midst of the storm.
Featuring Professor Laz Ekweme Chorale, Lagos.
Classical operatic soprano by Abiodun Koya.
Instrumentals and special appearances.
Save the date. It's Sunday, 1st December 2019 at the National Christian Center, Abuja, 3 p.m. prompt.
It promises to be soul-lifting and entertaining as we showcase scintillating music from different parts of the country.
Guest speaker, Dr. Paul Enenche, Senior Pastor, Dynamis International Gospel Center.
Lessons will be read by notable Nigerians, including the special guest of honor, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Oshibajo, SAN, GCON. Keep a date with Radio Nigeria, NTA and Voice of Nigeria, 1st December 2019, 3 p.m. at the National Christian Center, Abuja. Save the dates.
We wanna wish you a Merry, 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 Merry Christmas.
20 years of travel and counting. 20 years of promoting tourism in Africa and diaspora. Over 3 million kilometers traveled. Over 30 African countries visited. Explored the diaspora in 4 continents. Connected over 100,000 happy tourists to Africa. Reached over 50 million homes. Igniting smiles across Africa and beyond. As Kogi Africa turns 20, we thank you and invite you to join us in the quest for 20 must-visit destinations in partnership with the largest TV network in Africa, the NTA, Ministry of Information and Culture, Ministry of Transportation, Lagos State Government, Canon, Delta Airlines, Royal Caribbean, Toll Brokers International. You too can still be a partner. Call the numbers on your screen or info@gogeafrica.tv. Kogi Africa, celebrating 2 decades of heritage, travel and tourism.
Ha! Not so fast. Look, I'm tired. I want to check out of this country for greener pastures.
Just calm down for a moment. Please sit down.
Do you have a job where you're going to?
No, but someone is arranging, Listen, Alinko. Checking out of this country without proper planning means one thing. Unimaginable begin. I've been in the diaspora, but legitimately doing great things at home and abroad. As I've been saying, without the proper footing abroad, the risk is not worth it. Listen, Alinko, it's better to be home than be trapped abroad or even end up in prison.
My name is Balaunti. I'm the Managing Director of Petroleum Product Marketing Company, a subsidiary of NNPC. There are significant price discrepancy between Nigeria and its neighbors across Africa. There's a discrepancy of between 150 to 250 naira. That creates an incentive for arbitrage, whereby smuggling triumphed by taking petroleum product across the neighbor so that they can be sold at higher price. While the smugglers are making the money, Nigeria is paying for it. And that payment is distorting everything that we do in terms of planning, in terms of our ability to fund, and thereby taking money that is meant for development. The introduction of this Operation White will have a reduction of close to 6 million liters on a daily basis, which if you take an average of 150, translate to a saving of over 1 billion naira every day. That is the benefit of Operation White, and we have started seeing the great benefit.
All right, you're welcome back, and you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. Now let's talk business as Chimaobi Walter takes us on the business package.
Nigeria, regarded as a growing economy, has been going through lots of reforms through the implementation of various government policies aimed at diversifying the economy. To take discuss further, these panelists, drawn from different walks of life, are brainstorming on the need to have adequate measures in place in Africa and Nigeria in particular to protect intellectual property, the creative industry, and encourage young Nigerians to gain from their intellectual creations. This, they say, will help curb the huge amount of money lost annually to piracy due to low or lack of implementation of copyright and intellectual property protection.
Nigeria doesn't value intellectual property. Nigerians don't see the value in your creativity, your innovation. However, now we have our fashion, we have our music, we have our movies being celebrated all around the world. That is what's actually bringing money into the economy. That's our biggest export right now. But we don't have the relevant policy to back that up, to harness those sectors.
One critical area is actually what you mentioned, legislation. You need to have the right kind of legal framework around things. And you also have to have the ability to enforce that legislation and those acts when they happen. So without that, then without enforcement, there really isn't much point to it. But
the two-day Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the Central Bank of Nigeria has concluded with the decision to retain rates at 13.5% as well as maintain all other parameters. It retained a symmetric corridor at plus 200 and minus 500 around the MPR, cash reserve ratio at 22.5% and liquidity at 30%. The meeting, which is the last for the year, had all 11 members in attendance.
The need for increased efficiency in public expenditure and the building of fiscal buffers. On the impact of the recent closure of the Nigerian land borders on domestic food prices, committee noted that any upward price movement arising from the closure was reactionary and therefore temporary. Moreover, significant investment has been made over the last 3 years to sustainably increase domestic food supply.
Analysts had predicted that the MPC would leave benchmark unchanged to spur economic growth in the fourth quarter of the year. The committee also noted that the bearish trend experienced in the capital market since the beginning of November is an attestation to the sustained stability in the equities market. Here is a graphic representation of closing figures on the floor of the stock exchange. With business news, I'm Chimaobi Walter Naji.
Many thanks, Chimaobi, for the business package. Next for us on the program is newspaper review.
All right, Bayelsa, the here with us again this morning to give more insight into our review. Bayo, good morning.
Good morning, Rhoda. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Right, Bayo, good to see you.
Thank you.
Straight away, we have 4 papers, or
Yes.
4 or 5 papers. The front page of the Punch and the Daily Trust, they are very busy, but there's a story that is running from yesterday. We had a story on the front page and we discussed this on earpiece. One of the 2 earpieces beside the nameplate of the Punch newspaper. Zamfara Assembly stops 10 million naira monthly pay for Yari and others. Details can be found on page 9. Zamfara Assembly stops 10 million naira monthly pay for Yari and others. Details on page 9. And you have that same story right at the foot of the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. At the foot of the front page of the Daily Trust, it says Zamfara Assembly repeals law on allowances for ex-governors, deputies. Details on page 4. And so we'll take other headlines now from the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. The lead story says, fuel ban takes toll on border communities. Black marketers and smugglers having field day. And you can see the gas stations virtually empty, but then right below those photographs there, you see jerry cans of alleged smugglers. The deserted filling stations at Idiroko in Ogun State and along Daura Kongolam Road in Katsina. Jerry cans filled with petroleum products were seized by customs officials along the border in Kebbi State. Now, right below the nameplate of Daily Trust newspapers, kidnappers to get life jail and rapists in for tough time. And EFCC arrests 2 deputy controllers of correctional service over $1 million scam. It is before.
All right, on the Daily Sun, it's just beside the nameplate. 2020 budget suffers setback in Senate. Committee defers submission date of report. That's on page 6. It's just beside the nameplate. And the big story on the Daily Sun this morning. Bayelsa Guba presidency slams Lamido over claims. And that's on page 12. Obasanjo opens up on border closure. Obasanjo opens up on border closure, says Benin. That's Benin Republic must mend ways with Nigeria. That's the lead story for the Daily Sun this morning. It's on page 10. Now, let's look at other stories. Just beside the picture story there, NDDC presidency, Senate heads for showdown. Buhari submits 2019-2020 estimates as lawmakers for non-inauguration of board. And Dasuki Gates, May 2 knows February 25th as court delivers judgment. And DSS arrest kidnappers of Justice Nwosu Iheme. That's on page 4. And below that, Guba polls. That's a Kogi Guba. UN flays killing of PDP woman leader as reps probe election violence. That's on page 10 and page 12 of the Daily Sun. The picture story there is that of President Muhammadu Buhari welcoming the Prime Minister of Netherlands, Mark Rutte, to the villa yesterday. And below that, efforts to buy uniforms, flying suits from Cross River Garment Factory. That's a good one. And that's on page 40. All right, Bayo, let's begin with the story that Kingsley began with. And that's a story from Zamfara.
Yes, indeed, Zamfara State had the fastest law that has ever passed in its existence. The Zamfara State House of Assembly repealed the law allowing huge allowances for governors and deputy speaker and deputies. The law was presented on the floor of the House. It passed the first reading, second reading, and during plenary, it was passed to the committee. The committee went into committee session and returned to plenary, and that law was passed. As it stands, that law has now been repealed. It may be recalled that about 3 months ago, the former governor, Abdulaziz Yari, wrote to the governor to indicate that he had not been paid his allowances of 10 million naira a month. And since he left office in May 29, he had only been paid twice, and he was demanding the backlog of payment. So Honorable Musa Dosara was the one who proposed the bill, and the bill has been passed now, waiting for the assent of the governor. On the floor of the House heard that the Zamfara State could not afford to pay 700 million naira, which is the annual total commitment, if that law was to continue. And the state could not afford such huge amounts of money. Meanwhile, it may be recalled that at the end of May 2015, about 20 governors and deputy governors had to be paid their severance allowances. And that is what, in fact, governors are entitled to. Severance allowance of 300% of their basic salary. And for 20 governors and deputy governors, the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Commission had to pay about 4.68 billion to 20 governors who had completed, and deputy governors who had completed their terms. The other interesting story, and running story, of course, is the story of the IPPIS. The Punch reports that officials of the Accountants General of the Federation Office have arrived at various universities to commence IP's registration. At the University of Port Harcourt, the operation is at the Ebitemi Banigo Conference Hall, and the requirements that has been posted on the door requires that lecturers present letter of first appointment, letter of last promotion, evidence of transfer, if any, as well as a staff ID card, while they also are required to bring the birth certificate or sworn declaration of race. A Congress of the University of Academics in Port Harcourt has issued a communique directing all its members to go and register and enroll under the IPs. However, the Academic Staff Union of Nigeria Universities has directed its members not to comply with the registration. The representative of CONUA said that there is a danger with the Nigeria university system, and that both the government, parents, and the university academies need to rescue the university academic system from what he described as a precipice. He said that ASU has a tendency to incite members to embark on strike as a means of resolving industrial action. This is endangering higher education in Nigeria. And therefore, the coordinator of the Port Harcourt wing, Dr. Ovunda Ihunwo, and the secretary, O.O. Mbasili, enjoined their members to ignore the stand of ASU and register. At the Abuja University, it is said that about 200 workers have so far completed the process and they are awaiting biometric capture. However, none of the 200 is an academic staff. At University of Ibadan, University of Benin, and University of Nigeria and Nsukka, ASU members are adamant and resolved that they will not participate.
Okay, two issues here. The IPPIS, which we just talked about. The story is also there on the front page of the Punch newspaper. Above the nameplate, it says IPPIS, that's the kicker, unregistered lecturers may forfeit December salary. Details of that story can be found on page 22. Now, back to the Zamfara Assembly. You recall we discussed the issue yesterday and on the newspaper review segment, and the Zamfara House of Assembly has taken the step that it has taken, with a more revelation that the state was going to be spending some 700 million naira on allowances, not on pension. Yes, on allowances and not on pension. And as we indicated yesterday, there are several other states that are bleeding on account of the humongous payouts to their former governors and deputies. And we have to ask ourselves, at a time when there is a clamor for an increase in capital expenditure, why should we continue to have such hefty recurrent expenditure boosted in part by these payouts, to former officials who spent only 8 years in office, and some of them have also had speakers and deputy speakers of the state legislature included in it?
Yes, and sadly enough, most of the states do not have enough sufficient funds to pursue their capital projects. The recurrent expenditure takes a large chunk of it. In fact, some of them are not able to meet their salary needs of their state without federal allocation every month.
That's right. I mean, as we said, yes, there's nothing. The Zamfara incident only came about because of the letter that was made public, written by the former governor. As we indicated, 10 million naira every month as personal allowance. I mean, there are many ways you can use that money. Let us assume you pay 500,000 naira to Zamfara students, Zamfara indigents who are students in institutes of higher learning. That means every month you can pay 20 of them bursary. Every month, they just say 20 of you, okay, take this 10 million, another 20, take another 10 million, another 20. In a year, you'll see how many of them, we have the benefit of their bursary. Bayo, let's take other headlines very quickly. Above the nameplate seal of the constituency plan, reduce $57 budget oil benchmark. MPC, that's the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank, tells federal government. Once again, reduce $57 budget oil benchmark. MPC tells FG, that's on page 28. Crude rises to $64.17 and fuel subsidy hits 43 naira per liter. Again, that story is on page 28. Now, Boko Haram, that's the kicker. Allegation against Turkey, serious security issue. That's attributed to the defense headquarters with details on page 2. Now, an earpiece there also beside the nameplate of the Punch. Palm Sex, 39 directors fail, 48 for final interview. Details can be found on page 9. The directors didn't fail, they didn't make it, not that they failed. Details on page 9. Bayo, they didn't fail, they didn't make it.
They failed the exam.
Yeah, they didn't fail the exam, they didn't make it. You know? All right. Kogi killings, that's the kicker for the lead story. We can be victims of poll violence. That's attributed to senators. With 3 riders, Senate plans bill to stop violence during elections. UN condemns killings. It's irresponsible to say federal government blackmailed Jonathan. Details, of course, according to the presidency, can be found on page 2. Photographs there shows the scenes from Albania hit by an earthquake. And other headlines very quickly. Abuja transforming from nation's capital to mega slum. That's on page 3. Gunmen ambush police squad, kill 8 in Adamawa. And government's credit shrinks, private sector rises to 25.8 trillion naira. National Assembly may pass 2020 budget next week. And Dasuki's detention, panel to resume disciplinary hearing against Attorney General of the Federation.
All right, before you continue, Bayo, let me just quickly take the editorial for this morning, and it's on constituency projects. Of course, it's titled, it's on the New Telegraph. That's our editorial this morning. The New Telegraph, constituency projects of controversy. President Muhammadu Buhari last week stepped the hot nest when he said that Nigeria has wasted 1 trillion naira in the past 10 years on constituency projects. Wow.
Well, before we go to the constituency project, let's quickly look at the story that Kingsley read earlier on. That is the situation in Kogi. Christian Association of Nigeria has pleaded with Independent National Electoral Commission and the security agencies to leave above board in the rerun election that is coming on in Kogi West on Saturday. Director of National Issues, Reverend Samuel Owolabi, says citizens in those states are rattled with the violence, gunshot, ballot box snatching, and vote buying. He concluded that elections in Kogi, people are now demoralized for fear of being killed if they go out to work. But strangely enough, he was appealing to INEC and police, and he didn't appeal to politicians. INEC does not organize thugs, police does not organize thugs, and it is politicians who insist that policemen should not carry arms when they are in election duty, because such will scare away voters. And thugs capitalize on that to attack polling units where policemen are there but not armed. A policeman that is not armed is not able to face a thug that is carrying sophisticated weapons. So the police should actually go to the politicians. And accordingly, the chairman of the Jamaat Nasratul Islam, Usman Bello in Kogi said, had appealed to politicians that they should have the fear of God and allow politics to be played according to the games. For now, there are going to be rerun election in 2 locations. First, the resident electoral commissioner, Professor James Abam, says that there will be reruns for the federal constituency, which involve 23 polling units in Ajaokuta. The second one is the 52 polling units for the Kogi West senatorial seats. And he says INEC is ready for the exercise. Now to the editorial. The editorial is happening on constituency project. President Muhammadu Buhari, while addressing a summit on corruption, had expressed worry that in spite of the quantum of trillions that have been spent for constituency project over 10 years, there is virtually little to show for it. This has become a matter of concern. In the past 2 or 3 weeks, the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission has set out to investigate 400 constituency projects. They discovered over 400 constituency projects. And what else did they discover? They found that most of the projects have been abandoned. They have found that some contractors have collected funds for the projects and have run away for the project site. ICPC is on their trail, and many of them are now forced to return to sites to carry out constituency projects. Constituency project is the initiative of members of the National Assembly to enable their constituencies feel the impact of governance. And therefore, they propose constituency projects which ministries, departments, and agencies are supposed to execute. It is not supposed to involve the legislators. But what the ICPC found is that some legislators actually have their hands deep in corruption projects in the constituency project. And therefore, an editorial is happening on the fact that there should be full investigation to find out the quantum of sum that have been allocated for constituency projects and to see whether the outputs are actually justified for the sum that has been expended.
All right, Bayo, thank you very much. I guess that's the much we can take on the newspaper review this morning. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a break now, and when we come back, the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, joins us. He just visited the Semebada just a few days ago, and so we'll be discussing the ongoing bar closure. So stay with us.
They swore an oath to serve our fatherland and defend the people. They traded their freedom, comfortable homes, and mortgaged their lives on the battleground for our unity and peaceful living. These are the great, fearless, loyal, and committed Nigerian armed forces who risked their lives courageously to safeguard our borders. But in the line of duty, many never returned. Nigerians, arise, let's celebrate our fallen heroes. Put on the remembrance emblem with pride to support the incapacitated and families of our fallen heroes.
It is indeed befitting to honor the memory of the gallant hearts of young men who paid the supreme sacrifice to keep the united.
President Muhammadu Buhari enjoins all ministries, parastatals, religious and corporate bodies to donate generously to the Emblem Appeal Lunch. Send your donations to these accounts. Account name, Emblem Appeal Lunch. Account number 393-200-7526. EcoBank Nigeria PLC.
All right, you're welcome back. The Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, is seated here with us in the studio to share his experience with us during his visit to the Semebada. But just before that, let's see this report put together by Anthony Forsin on his visit.
Semebada is a settlement in Nigeria on the border with Benin Republic. 28th August, the federal government of Nigeria announced the commencement of a joint border security exercise codenamed Exercise Swift Response in 4 geopolitical zones of the country. It is being coordinated by the Office of the National Security Advisor. The idea is for a more robust securing of the nation's borders in a bid to equally strengthen the economy and address other transborder concerns. About 3 months down the road, this high-powered federal government delegation arrived Semebada to have an on-the-spot assessment of the situation. Headed by the Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed, there is also the Minister of Foreign Affairs Geoffrey Onyema, that of Interior Rauf Aregbesola, and Minister of State for Finance, Budget and National Planning. The Controller General of Immigration was present, while the Controller General of Customs was represented. There were representations also from the Office of the National Security Advisor and other security agencies involved in the exercise. They took time to inspect the semi-border control unit. As at the time of the visit, no activity was going on there, but over 1,000 trucks conveying various goods were seen parked on this huge land within the premises. The Information and Culture Minister said since the closure, the Nigerian customs revenue has shot up by 15%.
Since the commencement of the exercise, significant seizures have been recorded with estimated monetary value of over 3,500,000,000 naira.
On smuggling of rice and other items, the minister said it has reduced drastically.
Since the closure, there has been an enhanced production and milling of Nigerian rice. Patronage of Nigerian rice has also increased, and farmers are expanding their farms as well as engaging more hands.
He, however, reeled out items seized since the closure started. Sadly, however, the minister said Benin Republic and Niger are not doing enough to ameliorate the situation that led to the border closure, as statistics from the ongoing exercise points to that fact.
All right, thank you very much, Anthony Fawcett, for that background. Here with us in the studios, as my colleague indicated earlier, is Honorable Minister for Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed. Honorable Minister, a pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, so we heard your briefing there immediately after the visit, but you have had enough time to also reflect on what you saw along with some of your cabinet colleagues and other senior government officials who were there. Give us an assessment of what you found.
Thank you, Kingsley. I think it's important to understand the background to the partial closure. Over the years, there have been attempts by the Nigerian government to ensure that there is legitimate transit trade between Nigeria and her two neighbors, especially Niger and Benin Republic. The three countries belong to the ECOWAS, community, and the ECOWAS protocol on transit goods is very, very clear. It says that if a container berths at a seaport meant for another, and the container is meant for another country as final destination, the seaport at which it berths should escort the container unopened, unaltered, with the seals unbroken to the country of destination. So in the case of Nigeria, it means that if a container which is meant for Nigeria as final destination arrives at Cotonou seaport, the authorities in Benin Republic should not open the container. They should not tamper with the seal. They should escort it to the Nigerian border and hand it over to the customs in Nigeria at the Nigerian border, who would now examine the goods and levy what taxes or tariffs that must be paid. Unfortunately, over the years, the Benin Republic has failed and refused to comply with this simple protocol. The practice is for them to break the containers which are meant for Nigeria, and in many cases they would load about 5 containers into one truck and allow it to be driven to the border. When they get to the border, they treat it as if it's just one truck, and the fact that they've broken the seals makes classification very difficult. In the process, not do we only lose revenue, but illicit items such as arms and ammunition, drugs, also get into the country. But worse still is that this practice of breaking the containers has also led to a situation whereby about 60% of goods meant for Nigeria are actually let loose, and they go through unauthorized, borders, resulting in this, Nigeria becoming a dumping ground for all types of goods. And Nigeria made attempts to convince and persuade these neighbors. And in 2005, an MOU was, entered into by the two countries. I said, okay, we're not averse to free movement of goods between Nigeria and Niger and vice versa, or Benin and Nigeria and vice versa. But these goods must be those that are manufactured in the country of origin. And the parties went further to say that for any goods to be qualified as being made, in that country, it must contain at least 30% local content. This MOU was repeated in 2014, in 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. Yet, what we have is imported goods, foreign goods, that are now being shipped into Nigeria as if they are manufactured within the ECOWAS territory. And every attempt by the Nigerian government to persuade our neighbors failed. That is why when we realized that this was posing not just economic threat, but also security threat to Nigeria, we decided on what we call a border drill. And we must correct the impression. It's not total closure, because there's free movement of persons between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., provided they have valid travel documents.
All right, just as Kingsley indicated, from your visit so far, what has been the impact of the closure, especially at the border? What did you find out? I'm aware that you also spoke to some of the community members in that area.
You see, no country wishes to close its border permanently. Okay. And we just hope and pray that our neighbors will comply with the ECOWAS treaty and protocols on transit goods. Now, but we've witnessed that in the last 3 months, the gains of the border closure are so enormous. Now, we're not just talking about the economy, we're talking about also national security. But let me start with the economy. Seizures have been made that have a monetary value of almost 4 billion naira within those 3 months. Now, local consumption of PMS has gone down by 30%, which means we're effectively actually subsidizing the consumption of fuel in other countries. Now, revenue from import has gone up by 15%. In addition, and this is very important, our rice farmers have been expanding their farms, employing more hands, and the patronage of locally fabricated and locally milled rice has gone up. Yes, it is true that there's also been a small hike in the price of locally grown rice, but there's no gain without pain, and this is only going to be very temporary. Then the amount of seizure is mind-boggling. Over 11,000 jerrycans filled with PMS have been seized. 37,050 kilogram bags of rice have been seized in the period. 136 bags of NPK fertilizer, some of which have been used for explosives, have been seized. 296 illegal immigrants have been arrested. And amazingly too, we've noticed a drastic decline in banditry and kidnapping over the period. Yes, like I said again, we do not intend to permanently close the borders, but we will not be persuaded to open the borders unless we see positive signs from our neighbors. And frankly speaking, what has happened in the last 2 weeks has not shown that our neighbors are in a hurry to change their ways. For instance, as we speak today, there are 3 ships heading for Kutoni Port, all laden with rice. One is carrying 45,000 metric tons of rice, another is carrying 20,000 metric tons of rice, and the third is carrying 40,000 metric tons of rice. Now, you begin to wonder, Benin Republic is a country with just less than 12 million people, and yet you have this massive tonnage of rice coming in. Of course, it's Christmas period, and it's meant for Nigeria. In addition, the Republic just concluded arrangements for Japan to donate rice worth $30 million to the country. Where is that rice going to end? You see, we appreciate the concerns of Nigerians who are a bit, discomfited, by the temporary closure. But they must see the larger picture. We're talking about one national economy and more particularly national security.
Well, I mean, your points have been very well articulated, Minister. Indeed, the partial land border closure is an issue that we have also taken on Good Morning Nigeria. Well, there are several curiosities around this. You referenced a while ago the apparent unwillingness of our neighbors, Niger Republic and Benin Republic, to change their ways, which precipitated the partial closure in the first instance. What do we know about, for lack of a better word to choose, why they remain adamant in what they are doing? I mean, they're not aware that they are hurting our economy, or they just feel that it's business as usual. What else can we do to fully understand why they are doing what they are doing, other than just say, look, we're going to close our borders in the meantime?
Oh, Kingsley, as we speak, there are high-level diplomatic talks going on. Even as recently as yesterday, I'm aware that the customs authorities of both countries are meeting to see how the impasse can be broken. We will support any diplomatic or political solution to this issue, but these are real existential problems that Nigeria must address. And we can't afford to be emotional on this issue. You see, we're talking about revenue being lost on a daily basis. Revenue that could be used for infrastructure, can be used for, to employ more people. We're talking about our country's security being endangered. We're talking about by the proliferation of arms and ammunition. We're talking about our youth being destroyed daily by the legal importation of tramadol and all this. And you see, these, I think, are the issues we should address. And this is why we are resolute that all we are asking these countries to do is 2 simple things. 1, respect the ECOWAS protocol on transit goods. 2, the MOs we signed in respect of free movement of goods, state of origin should be respected. And from that, once those issues are resolved, we can move on and then resolve other issues.
I'm just wondering, I mean, look, for instance, today, while we were reviewing the newspapers, there were reports of some smuggling activities still taking place. In this case of PMS being smuggled out of Nigeria to the neighboring countries. In terms of intelligence gathering, why did it seem to be such a challenge for us to much earlier than now appreciate and in fact apprehend the fact that, look, Nigeria is subsidizing other economies with regard to PMS?
Kingsley, even before the partial border closure, there have been instances and records of seizures. You see, of people trying to smuggle and customs trying their best to arrest them. But don't forget that we have probably one of the longest borders, in the world. And only recently, I think even customs is trying to deploy technology to better use, to better use to patrol our borders. But the problem is that even when we provide equipment for the other, for our neighbors to help us, curb smuggling, they don't. For instance, we provided trucks to Benin Republic to escort, containers coming to Nigeria. These trucks are not being used by them. So it needs cooperation of both countries. You see, if no matter how good our customs are, if our neighbors don't cooperate with us, we are going to have the same situation that we have today.
All right, Honorable Minister, let's take our tweets now. We have tweets coming in from our viewers via Twitter handle at NTAGMN. This one is from Adekunle Oluwashibomi Olayemi. He says, border closure is the only answer to Nigeria's problem. No advanced country will ever allow foreign items to supersede its locally produced goods.
Now, Chris Simeon has this tweet. There is a disharmony between Nigeria and her neighbors due to closure of borders by the federal government. And he claims that about 100 firms have left Nigeria for the past 3 months. What is the source of this information?
And Francis Obi says, heard from Customs and Minister of Information that is very beneficial. But when you compare it with the cries from the masses on the economy, government should give us more and better alternatives.
Okay, Festus Akimboyewa tweets, with the border closure, government has been able to control smuggling of illegal arms, rice and fuel. Our rice farmers are now smiling to the banks, and attacks by Boko Haram have reduced. Our neighboring countries have been sabotaging our country for decades, and enough is enough.
And Akeju Olagbaju says, border closure is a good response to the illicit trade between two neighboring countries. I support federal government's closure of the border. What is needed is a consistent review and monitoring until it is established that sanity prevails on the movement of goods that are illegitimate.
This is Amagwala Humbabs. That's the next tweet. As of today, our neighboring countries have not fulfilled their side of the bargain. They've refused to agree to respect the ECOWAS transborder protocols. On that basis, let the borders remain shut until they are ready to do the needful. Nigeria won't continue to be shortchanged.
And Titus Monday says, the time of playing a big African brother role is gone. Some of these African countries have gone behind our backs to stop us after so many sacrifices we have done for them, even at the expense of spilling intelligence Nigerian information. So we hope that the border remains closed. This one is from Titus Monday. All right, thank you very much. Remember, you can continue to send in your tweets via Twitter handle at NTAGM. And if you have questions for the Honorable Minister, you have comments, just send them via Twitter handle at NTAGMN. Honorable Minister, in your remarks now, you said that this is a partial closure and it won't remain closed. After some time, it's expected that when our neighboring countries comply with this treaty, it will be open. One question that comes to mind is, when it's eventually open, what are the strategies that you think, what strategies do you think would be put in place to also ensure that smuggling is also still dealt with and the issue of illicit arms coming in? Because it's obvious that this closure has done a lot, but then when it's open, what happens?
You see, if it is opened and we do not respect the protocol on transit, we are still going to have the same problem. See, what happens is that if transit goods are not handed over to the country of destination, there cannot be proper examination. There cannot be proper classification. So it's very important. You see, a situation whereby you mislabel or deliberately, containers or trucks as containing one thing and they contain another. It's the bane of this proliferation of, illegal arms and drugs. So once we can address that, then our problem is half solved. The next is that we must also ensure that we now deploy better technology thirdly, there must be better synergy between our neighbors. The authorities on both sides must cooperate. And if we achieve this, there will be minimum smuggling. So you see, smuggling, don't forget, it's not just, it's a very complex a problem. You will be amazed that even when we went on on Monday to the border, we had, even from our own side, people with placards telling us to open the border, they are suffering, but we were not deceived for one moment because we knew that these urchins have been sponsored by some people who are benefiting from the illegal and illicit trade. But we took pains also to explain to them that, listen, it's precisely because of smuggling that you don't have jobs. But when we had closed door meetings with the customs, a lot of stories, some of them, some hilarious, some quite serious, some people don't even think it's an offense to be smugglers. They proudly introduce themselves as smugglers. And when they had stakeholders meeting, they introduce themselves, my name is XYZ, and I've been smuggling for the last, many years. So, which means again, even in the area of advocacy also. Yeah. And I must say that customs has been trying very much to also integrate and with the locals. And the level of cooperation between the locals and customs has been quite remarkable from what we saw and what we heard from both sides.
That is in the past 3 months.
Yes.
Partial
actually, even before then, in fairness to them, because when we got to Sabe border, we also met with national rulers, we also met with stakeholders. Everybody came, from around the border. They also had their own issues, of course, and the customs had their own issues too. But I think they all agree that smuggling is not in the overall interest of Nigeria.
Okay, Rhoda, the minister is here. I'm sure that, public affairs analysts are quite familiar with the steps taken by some governments of other countries to protect their national interests. The U.S. government, for instance, we saw in trying to stem the tide of drug trafficking into the United States, it's taking action against Colombia in the past. It's taking action against Panama and Mexico and several other countries. So there's nothing strange about that. But we have also seen, Honorable Minister, subtle pressure and appeals and even blackmail coming from dignitaries and indeed from other persons. The former Ghanaian President, John Mahama, was here pleading and saying, let's reopen our borders. President Obasanjo, as reported now, says no, that our neighbors must learn their lessons. Some Ghanaian traders have also taken the step of closing down Nigerian businesses. Is the federal government under tremendous pressure? And if it is under such pressure, is it likely to buckle?
The government is under pressure, no doubt. But, you see, national interest, I think, is foremost in whatever we are doing. It's not personal. We don't want to ruin the very, long-standing relationship we've had with, other countries and our neighbors. But if Nigeria does not exist as a country, there can be friendly relationship with any country. So to that extent, we are asking for minimum compliance. It is our neighbors must obey the ECOWAS protocol on transit goods. Our neighbors must comply with the MOUs we all voluntarily entered into. If we do not, if we don't want to, we must go back and sit down and say, okay, we want the MOUs to be this way. But as it is today, we are waiting for signs from our neighbors that they are ready to comply.
Well, I was just wondering, Rhoda, sorry, what is, we are in Nigeria, we are all Nigerian. What is the obsession with rice smuggling? Rice. And we produce local, and our local rice tastes better. What is the obsession?
It's so mind-boggling because, some of the videos you've seen of smuggling, people go as far as smuggling rice inside car tank.
Yeah, but the tank, what is the obsession?
You begin to wonder, what is the obsession, really?
I think smuggling is a very complex issue. I must say, multifaceted also, and it's a multi-billion-dollar business. Whether in rice, whether in petroleum products, whether in drugs, whether in arms and ammunition. And this is, I think, what most commentators and have not appreciated. That it even goes, see, the implication of this smuggling even goes beyond the borders of Nigeria and actually affects our national security. Like I've said, in the last 3 months, banditry, kidnapping have gone down because the two things that fuel banditry and kidnapping are actually arms and ammunition and drugs. And if only for that, I believe that we are on the right track, and we must just continue to insist and ensure that even when the borders are open, it's not going to be business as usual again on both sides.
And the other aspect is fine. Okay, we are having these gains that have been recorded. Rice farmers are applauding what's playing out. Customs indicating that there's been a rise in its revenue receipts, and we're spending probably less now in terms of fuel consumption and all of that. But what are we doing on the side of the metrics? Namely, does the border closure afford us an opportunity to realistically assess our local productive capacity and actual production, say of rice and indeed other items that are usually top on the smugglers list, minus arms and ammunition?
You see, I got a call about 2 months ago, about a month into the closure of the border, from a gentleman who retired as a director in Total and set up a poultry farm in Ibadan. And he called me and he said, please, could you, I want you, because we closed a bit. And he said, I want you to please help me speak to the governor of Central Bank. I need more money to expand my poultry. And I said, oh, you're doing so well. He said, sir, since the border closure, it's been phenomenal. He said, before border closure, I was doing 4,000 bucks a day. Say today, I can't meet demand of 15,000, 20,000 bucks a day. And I said, oh, and it was quite fortunate because I was with the Central Bank governor. We're having a meeting. And I said, could you repeat this to the Central Bank governor? Which he did. Now, that is just one example of what is happening, to the local farmers and local entrepreneurs. Now, the rice farmers are so glad that they cannot also meet their own demands. And that's why they are hiring more hands, they are clearing more land. So, on the long term, if we are able to curb smuggling, we don't curb smuggling just by, border closure. There are other ways we can curb smuggling, which we are also, looking into. But, like rightly said, it is because we have this foreign taste, which is very harmful to us, not just in terms of, economy, but even health-wise. We import rice, which have been stored for years, which most times are unhealthy, and which again are, this rice is heavily subsidized by the countries that are coming, from which they are coming. So then our farmers cannot be competitive. And this is why the Anchor Boys program is doing everything possible to make our own farmers more competitive. So really, we look at this thing not in terms of just border closure, in terms of overall development of our economy and our well-being of Nigerians and national security.
All right, the Minister just raised the issue of, rice, not just rice, even turkey, chicken. I tell you that before the border closure, I think a carton of chicken or turkey was about 14,000. Now it's about 20-something thousand. And a lot of people are now forced to eat our local chicken and buy, chickens that are...
You can't buy take goat now. Goat meat is very healthy.
Very, very healthy.
Goat meat is very healthy. Fish is also very...
And funny that some of these turkeys and chicken, the frozen ones that they import, they've been on the high sea, they've been prepared for over a year, more than a year, 2 years, before they get here. You can imagine the harm that it's doing to our health.
But Honorable Minister, it's part of your purview. Unfortunately, one of your parastatals, the National Orientation Agency, we keep saying it here, is under-resourced. That's advocacy, and advocacy. For Nigerians to better appreciate with the larger implications of this partial land book. It's a drastic measure, but it might work wonders from the numbers that we are seeing already.
Because I can't agree more with you, and I've also met with Mr. President on the need also to strengthen the NOA. NOA is present in 74 local governments of Nigeria. NOA has the capacity and has the platform to really break into every major languages, every major language in Nigeria, what the government is doing. But we also appreciate the fact that these are not the best of times for Nigeria in terms of revenue. But of course, it's like which one comes first? With this border closure and more revenue to government in all forms, of course, it's easier for NOA also to get more revenue.
All right, thank you, Honourable Minister, for joining us this morning on this discussion. It's always our pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much, Rita.
All right, it's on that note we want to thank the Honourable Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, has been with us this morning discussing the border closure, and of course he was at the Benin Seme border, and of course you just heard all that he saw, and of course giving us the benefits of the border closure so far. We'll take another break, and when we come back, we'll be discussing the recently launched sex offenders register. So stay with us.
Meet the dreamer. Meet the stylish. Meet the bold. Meet the inquisitive. Meet the warrior. Meet the master. Meet the realist. The challenge is coming. Unity Challenge. Power, development, and peace. Coming soon.
To dey disobey traffic law, they cause accidents. Me, I don't talk, say I no go dey do am again, because change begins with me.
I will no longer endanger my life crossing the express. Instead, I will use the bridge, because change begins with me.
Oga driver, stop this bus now, won't come down. I be one carry me past where they go.
Make I dey stop anyhow for road, they cause traffic wahala and accidents. So I go dey stop for the right bus stop, because change begins with me.
Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Advertising your goods and services on the right channel gives you an edge over your competitors. NTA News 24 has all the platforms for your target audience. The station is on DSTV channel 419, GoTV channel 46, Star Times channel 101, and Free TV channel 703. With our digital format and wide range, we can reach your customers in next to no time. We are eager to promote your business, goods, and services. So, partner with us for a very rewarding business experience. For more information, please call Henry on 0803-379-0884 or visit our office at NTA Headquarters, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. NTA News 24. News and more news.
right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And we're having a second topic for conversation. A while ago, we signed up the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, who was discussing the outcome of the visitation by senior government officials to the Senate border. And just to indicate that the visit to Semeboda isn't the only one to be undertaken by the government officials. Indeed, the Honorable Minister has stated that sometime next week, they will be visiting other border points with Niger Republic, and thereafter also touch on with Cameroon, and be sure that they go around all the points and soak up what the issues are and use that to reinforce Nigeria's position with regard to the partial land border closure. All right, our second topic, of course, relates to the first ever nationwide sex offenders register in Nigeria. Rhoda and I had earlier bantered on that while we were commencing to this program. The benefits of it and how, of course, the register is going to operate is our topic for a conversation right now. And let's welcome the Director of Legal and Prosecution of the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons. Is a lawyer. That's Abdul Rahim Okoto Shuaibu. Shuaibu, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay.
And, of course, we hope that some of the guests will join us in the course of the conversation. All right, Abdurrahim Shuaibu, let's begin. What is this sex offenders register all about? What is it all about?
Thank you so much. In 2015, a law was established by the National Assembly called the Trafficking in Persons Prohibition Act. And another law, which is against violence against persons, was also established in that 2015. It is called Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. And that particular law is meant to protect violence against persons, particularly sexual-based violence and gender-based violence. And it is meant to protect the vulnerable ones, particularly the women and children, who are daily being raped, maimed, and violated. And that law is supposed to protect children in all ramifications. So the law actually is applicable in the Federal Capital Territory, and it is also being advertised, so to say, to all state government to be able to adopt this law to make it operational. So in Section 1, Section 4 of the law, it provides for sexual offenders register. It means that register is meant to keep all record of those who have been caught, reported to have, sexually violated our children and women, and that is to serve more as a deterrent measure. That is to name and shame those who have been convicted, so that they'll be there in the public domain for everyone to see. Actually, the one that is for every member to see has to do with those who have been convicted by the court. So once you are convicted, your face, your particulars, name, and where you come from will be there for the entire world to be able to access it. Then the register is such a way that it's graded, that even those who are reported, even if the case did not proceed, it will be there for you. Then even if you go to court and eventually you're able to, win the case, maybe due to, you got some good lawyers or whatever it is, due to technicality, and you are able to get off the hook, your name will still be there. But these other ones are not open to the public, So people can also apply for it before you can get it. Meaning that if you are going to engage a driver, you want to engage a domestic servant, you want to engage gate men, whatever it is, you have to come to NAPTIP to say, please, do you have any information regarding this person I want to engage? Whether he was at one point in time involved in some of this violation of people's, children's rights by way of either rape or sexual offenses. So that is meant to really guide how you can employ or those who are employable in your own system. So it is national in outlook because all state government, all state authorities are supposed to key into it. So we are working with the Nigerian police, we are working with the Nigerian Civil Defense Corps, we are also working with all security outfits across Nigeria to be able to collect all this record. So once anyone is convicted on sexual offenses issues, it will come into our database for purpose of sharing with other stakeholders.
Okay,
yeah, I was just wondering, again, explain the scope of the register and the law granted it. This earlier you were talking about it being applicable to only the Federal Capital Territory. Just explain that, because I hope I wasn't mistaken when I said, look, this is the first ever, nationwide register. Yes. So let's get that clear.
Yeah, quite right, sir. The law, that is the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, is applicable to FCT. That is the one we are using at national level. Other states have also adopted that same law. It is similar to the Child Act that was enacted in FCT, applicable to FCT, but other states, about 25, have also adopted it. So it's similar to that. This Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act is being adopted by all states. As at present, 5 states have also adopted it, and more states are going to adopt it. So it's like a stakeholders approach to it. We're all working together. So the reason why this is central to us is that for NAPTIP, we are the one that is depository of the register in NAPTIP. And every conviction, every case, all cases that have been done in all over Nigeria, we are networking with all our partners to get all those data on record and feed it into this central register to be shared by everyone. So, sir, it's a multifaceted approach we are adopting right now. So we are not going to compare anyone, because the state government cannot, the federal government cannot compare state government on certain issues, but everybody is working together in synergy to ensure that this register is central and it is accessible by everyone.
So states who don't adopt it, would you still get data from them or from them?
Yes, many states, they have different way of, making their own laws. Like in Lagos State, they all long ago has law that they call Gender-Based Violence Act. I mean, the law which they are using. Then thereafter, they now enacted another law that has to do with violence against persons. Rivers State has such a law. Ekiti State has such law. Okay. All of them, are also feeding our database with their own record. Okay. So once they have any record, they give us. So we key it into it. It doesn't stop them from having their own state record as well. Okay. But all this record they have, they also give us. We put it in there, and it's accessible to the public.
Does it follow from what you are saying that states like Lagos, Ekiti, Rivers, and others now have their own sexual offenders register?
No, they don't have.
Okay, or alternatively, is there any state which at present has a sexual offenders register?
No. The sexual offenders register is central. They don't have. So, but most of them are actually, engaging in prosecution of these offenders. So when they engage in the prosecution and they're able to get conviction or secure punishment against them, they give us the information for us to be able to key it into this central register. So the central register is one. That is what we are targeting. That is going to be one and to be shared by all. So that all state governments are doing whatever they have under their own law. But this register is central. That is why it was actually launched on the 25th of this month, this very week, this Monday, by the Vice President of the country, because it's going to give it that political visibility that, this is what Nigeria as a nation wants, that predators, pedophiles have no place in Nigeria. That this register is meant to keep this record for the entire world to be able to see that Nigeria does not condone violence against women and particularly rape.
I'm wondering, so what you're saying now is that I want to really understand, and I'm sure some people are also trying to understand just as I am. What you're saying now is every state has their own law in terms of sexual, offenders. Every state has its own law, but then all states don't have a register. There is a central register, so it's expected that when issues like this happen over there, they send such information to you and you compute it in the national database.
Yes. You see, even as it is presently, it's not all states that has law of violence against persons. It's not all states. And that's why I've mentioned, I say 5 states has already adopted it. Many more states are yet to do so. So now a very high advocacy is being put in place, and we have a lot of partners. We have what we call ROLAC, Rule of Law Against Corruption, and supported by British government as well as EU. They are also working on that area to see that all the states who have not keyed into it are also able to have their own laws, on violence against persons. So once they have such law, then it will now create a very smooth synergy between this federal government and all the state government to be able to get all this record and information that we can key it into the central base of the National Register.
Okay.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier about how this register is going to work. Before we begin to look at the benefits of the register, why it's important that we have it, you spoke on how it's going to work. There's the one that we can't access until we request for it. There's the one that we can access, almost immediately. Tell us give us more details on how it's going to work, in the sense that if I want to employ someone, it mustn't be a driver, it might just be a young person who's a professional. Do I go to NAPTIF to say, give me the register, or the register is available online? Anybody can just open it and, go online and sexual offenders register, and you can see who's there.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Well, what I need to explain is that actually the Central Offenders Register is web-based. Okay. It's online. It's an online thing. Okay. You can easily go to, you can Google it and to, come to you. So it is robust and it is interactive. So if you are able to, if you want information, because it is you that actually wants to engage someone that will need to do a background check. Once you want background check to be checked for you on anyone you want to employ, you apply to us. You need to do the needful. So that if you don't do so, and eventually something arises, you may be taken as aiding. So for you not to be caught and not to be seen as actually supporting crime. So once you want to employ someone that you are not sure of, or you don't know the whole background, you can do background check with NAPTIP to find out. So the grading, like I've mentioned earlier, has to do with those who have been reported. Okay. If a matter was reported against you, that you have actually committed violence against persons, or you have committed rape, we keep the record. Reported cases to NAPTIP or to any other law enforcement agency, including police, including civil defense, and including local, even at every state. Once you are reported that you have done this, it will be recorded. But then that is not accessible to the people, to the entire public. It's not, So, but we can share it among our sister law enforcement agencies. When we are doing investigation, we are doing verification, we share it and say, this person that has come to us, please, have you have anything about him before? They'll say yes, they'll say no. So that is, we do it either. Then, for those who want background check, also when we apply, actually we require you to pay a token to be able to have such information.
When you say token, before you go ahead, what do you mean?
That is, you pay some money, like maybe 1,000 naira. Okay. And say, please,
it is?
It is, sir. 1,000. Yes, it's 1,000. Actually, when we showcased the Central Offenders Register, it was there in the public. So you pay 1,000 naira and you access it. We give it to you. But it's not meant to be out there in the public anyhow. Okay. We are not going to allow it to be used to blackmail people. We are not going to allow it to be used to, cause embarrassment to others. Okay. It's going to be done in a very organized manner, in such a way that at least those who are not have not done anything wrong or whatever will not be used.
Yes, who are still presumed to be innocent.
The first set of persons that will appear on your register, you say, are those against whom there have been reports, or about whom there have been reports. Okay. What will be the next set of persons?
The next set of persons are those that even when they were reported, we take them to court. Maybe for us, we found professional case against them and we arraign them in court, and eventually they are left off the hook. By that due to technicality, or maybe the witnesses are not available, because sometimes some of the witnesses are not really willing. They don't want to be further stigmatized, or so they don't come up. And by such will be
to say a suspect who has been arraigned,
but discharged, not acquitted, but yes,
arraigned, tried, discharged, but not acquitted.
Not acquitted.
Then
Yes.
next category.
The next category are those who have been arraigned, tried, and convicted. Those ones are automatically accessible to the members of the public. Automatically, once you have been convicted, your face, your picture, everything will be there.
Yeah.
So those
Give
ones
us
are
what are the particulars of the persons that will be on the register?
Yes, the particulars will their full name, their local government, where they come from, maybe their tribe, everything that you need to know that is even in the, the Nigerian register, that is NIMSI. All those identities will be there. So all those particulars will be there, your height, your color, the color of your eyes, everything that will really bring you out that this is who you are will be there. And in any case, it is a world-based thing, so you can access it from Ukraine, from whatever part of the world, to show that this is the person who was convicted.
All right, just before we introduce our next guest, I was going to ask you, there have been lots of initiatives like this. Like I said, before we go into the benefits, there are lots of initiatives like this that have been introduced in the past, and after a while it just dies down. How are we sure that this is not another hype again? Sex offenders register, and the next 2 years you go online, you're looking for sex offenders register, you can't get, they say we are still working on it. What are you doing about the implementation?
Thank you so much. We are hoping and believe that this is going to be very much sustainable. Why? Because it's like we're adopting the whole of government and whole of society approach to it. Stakeholders are coming together. A lot of NGOs are very much involved in this work. It's not a government thing at all. It's not just fully for government. A lot of NGOs are involved. A lot of international partners are involved. I've mentioned issue of EU, European Union. I've mentioned issue of British Council. I've mentioned issue of ROLAC, who are supporting this outfit. Yeah. So, and in the register, again, a lot of specialists are involved. Health workers are involved. Social workers are involved in such a way that when evidence are being collected, they are verifiable and they can be used properly. So it's going to be very much sustainable, honestly speaking.
All right, earlier on I indicated that another guest will be joining us. Now we have joining us Barrister Hawa Evelyn Shekarau. She's the country director, IPAS Nigeria. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, speak to us. How do you feel about the launch of the Sex Offenders Register?
Thank you for having me. I'm really, really excited and very elated about the launch of the Sexual Offenders Register. It is something that we have been yearning for years. I was part of the women's group that, worked hard to get the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act passed in 2015. And it was a process that took us 13 and a half years before the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act was passed into law. And the experience was quite exhausting, And so, like we always know, when you pass the law, it's not just enough. The important thing is how you get that law implemented. Now, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act 2015 in Section 1, subsection 4, makes provision for the provision of sexual offenders register. So, the launch of the Sexual Offenders Register 2 days ago, for me, is all a right step in the right direction, showing that we are, in the process of ensuring that the provisions of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act are implemented. So it's something of great joy to me and most of women working in the area of women's rights, advocacy.
I was just wondering, are there potentially knotty issues that might arise with the maintenance of this register? I'm asking this question against the background of what you know very well, that the police what is called a force CID, Criminal Investigation Department, which is one of the top branches of the police. They have a database as well. Barrister Schreiber was telling us a while ago that, okay, the Sexual Offenders Register is domiciled in NAPTIP, but the force CID also has a database. I mean, people, persons get printed, they have profiles that they keep, and all of that. So, how is this going to work out?
Yeah, I think that some of these different databases, with the way the government is going about ensuring people have this NIN. I think I've read somewhere where at some point some of these databases will be connected, such a way that whatever information you have about one person in any of the databases, it is connected. That is one. And then secondly, the sexual offenders register, like the NAPTIP officer did mention, is going to be maintained, is like a multi-sectoral team that is working to maintain that register. You also have NGOs who are working on making sure that every month it is updated. So there would be, I do not think...
law enforcement agencies, let's face it.
No, they're not, but they are partners in progress. The reality is that the push for even the sexual offenders register is a civil society initiative. But of course, the civil society initiative cannot get any traction without the involvement of the agencies, the key agencies that are involved. I also want to point that there is this sexual and gender-based violence response team. That team consists of the police, the civil defense, and civil society. They are working, their office is at the Social Development Secretariat, together with some of the staff of the Social Development Secretariat. Okay. And every information that has to do with sexual or gender-based violence, they are the people who are documenting some of these issues.
Yeah, you know how your explanation is clear, but I just, Schwabo, you're also familiar with this. Sometimes you get into interagency rivalry.
Yeah, that's correct.
Interagency rivalry is there. That's why I was talking about the maintenance of this register. Now, when an offense is committed, the police has a gender desk. The police has a gender desk at force headquarters, whether they have it at state commands, it's a different issue, or at DPO level. Usually, if there's a sexual offense, the first port of call is not an NGO, but it's to the police. Yeah. Okay, now tell us, in terms of your relationship, because this is, as has been said, it's a laudable project, so that we don't miss out the informational value of this register. Now, the police will not report to NAPTIP, let's face it. The DPO will not report to you. A state police commissioner who mounts a command will not report to NAPTIP. How then do you hope to extract information from the police blotter with regard to sexual offenses and incorporate that into your own register, which is domiciled at NAPTIP?
Thank you so much, sir. You see, the way Amanda, the law is tailored is such that all the partners, are supposed to work together, and we have a monitoring team. The police is involved. I mentioned them earlier. The civil defense are there. So we meet from time to time to compare notes, and exchange intelligence and information. Agreed. Police are more versatile and well spread than NAPTIP. So when cases of rape, come out, they may get to it earlier than other law enforcement agencies. But then they also know that they have a responsibility, and they also have that task of reporting and comparing with NAPTIP, and they do. They have been doing it a lot, sir. We have been working with, particularly here in FCT. So once they have information, they get across to NAPTIP, and we compare notes, and they sometimes transfer cases to us. So we transfer cases. They transfer cases to NAPTIP. They say, NAPTIP, please, this one, you can handle it better than us. Please, go ahead. So we do, and we give them feedback on what has happened. Yeah. So we have been doing so with police in a very seamless manner. And the law, Section 40 of the sexual offender, of the violence against persons, so that NGOs are key. They are mentioned. That's what we call service providers. Yeah. So service providers include health officers, include lawyers, they have legal clinic. So even when cases happened, you are supposed to, even if you cannot go to police directly, you are supposed to go to a health center to be able to get that medical treatment, that will be documented, and these providers are supposed to be there. So people have been registered, more than almost 100 now, sir, have been registered. That is service providers who are mainly NGO based, have been registered and they have been, documented to help in this area. So it's a whole of society and whole of government approach to this particular issue.
All right, just very.
I wanted to add that the gender desk of the police, they are together in that response team. And I've also had the opportunity to also assess what is happening in Lagos and Ekiti State under the rollout program. And they are working in tandem. By the way, Lagos also has their own database of sexual offenders register in Lagos, and also Ekiti State.
They have a register.
Yes, okay. In Ekiti State, they actually call it the Black Book. Where they also record people who have been tried, discharged, and acquitted, and also those who have been convicted.
So what's going to happen now is that you're going to work together with them to also ensure that these registers are harnessed together and
with
the national database.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yes, and also it's a process that has just begun. Yes. Definitely, it will continue to be fine-tuned and get better. And the violence against persons prohibition, as we speak, has been domesticated in 10 states. So we still have efforts to get them domesticated in the remaining 26.
We're back to the sexual offenders register. We must acknowledge that we have a challenge of identity management in Nigeria. So a person can come with 3 different names, rearrange them in different orders. How do we overcome that so that these sexual predators don't find that as a loophole to escape scrutiny and ostracism by the rest of decent society?
I agree with you, particularly also in Nigeria, where you can have some people with same name. Like I've had somebody with the name Hawashi Karau, but it's not me. And that's where some of the details, the other biometrics, are also very, very important. Right. The biometrics are taken; they are also, documented, and that is why the process of making sure that when people reach out to verify to do background checks, they have to go through the process that would make sure that it goes through all the biometrics and make sure that, yes, the person we're talking about is actually, that person. So I think that is key.
Let me ask you, sexual offense is one issue that in Nigeria, when you take to court, it's always very difficult to establish because of some of the issues that surround it, like evidences, having people come out to say, oh, I saw this, or what does this mean for victims of sexual violence? Will this in any way promote justice for them?
Yeah, truly, having been on the field working with victims for over 2 decades now, the reality is because of sometimes the failure of the criminal justice system, some of them are held back from coming out to report. We also have the issue of stigma around, especially for the victim, particularly when that victim is a young girl, yet unmarried. The fear of the stigma around her that might prevent her from getting married in future. And also, very, very important issue again is where the sexual violence is within the family, incest and other stuff. So these are concerns that we and the women's movement have tried to tackle through sensitization, awareness creation, and advocacy, letting people know that we need to break that culture of silence. People need to come out, and speak up. You remember the Busola saga recently? The whole nation was, people were for and people were against. And the reality is that even for those who are against, they do not seem to understand the issues. They don't seem to understand from the perspective of the victim. It's not easy to come out and say, so person has sexually violated me.
Okay, that's right. Let's pause you there because we have a number of tweets that have come in from our viewers. Akeju Olabwaju has this tweet. It says the register should be for all forms of sexual offenders in order to assist the security agencies. The sex offenders are those who have been convicted, but effort should also be on sexual predators and how to provide cure or treatment for their predatory behaviors, which are on the rise, especially in institutions of higher learning. And
Festus Akibo, your tweet says the introduction of sex offenders register should be applauded as it will have significant deterrent and effect on sex crimes. Once the register is up and running, government must provide the resources needed to track many of the sex offenders and ensure it doesn't result in it doesn't come out in a bad light.
Okay, now, Adejumo Paul Olubimi tweets, having a sex offenders register is long overdue. This will go a long way in stopping sexual harassment by lecturers. The register should be computerized and accessible by all on the internet. Well, this raises the question, is sexual harassment, who are sexual offenders? Is it a harasser, a rapist, a violator, or who?
Sexual harassment is sexual violence. As even provided by the violence.
As we saw with those who were visiting the code room at University of
Lagos. Code room, yeah.
All right, okay.
And Delija Solomon says many of Nigerian women are sexually abused before they turn 18, and with the majority of cases of sexual abuse in the country not prosecuted, thus there is the need to strengthen the capacities of government and key stakeholders, including social welfare and justice services that prevent and respond to violence against women and children in Nigeria. Nothing less of this.
Chris Simeon, the launch of the Sexual Offenders Register is a welcome development. Those who cannot control their sexual desires should be penalized.
Finally, Omogbola Abab says Sex Offenders Register is a very good move by the government. It gives citizens useful information about those who are menace to the society at large and need to avoid them. It equally serves as a means of restraint for potential offenders and other pedophiles once they know they will enter into the record. And so this brings me to my question. How do you ensure that such registers are not compromised? Because what happens is, if a person knows that if I am convicted, and so my name would appear on the sex offenders register, and of course the implication of that is nobody would want to employ you, nobody would want to give you a job, and so that means you don't have a source of livelihood. I'll do anything I can to ensure that my name doesn't enter, even if I've committed a crime. How do we ensure that such registers are not compromised, even within NAPTIP? That somebody has committed an offense, you see somebody go, we see it in some parts, that people go to pay and say, please, my name should not be on this register.
That's a very valid, point you have raised there, and I think that because this sexual offenders register is going to be managed by a multi-sectoral group, it will be difficult for one entity to want to manipulate the process, and it's also web-based and will be monitored by different levels of agencies, including civil society group. I think that it will. I'm not saying that it may not. There will be no attempts, but it will be very, very difficult to listen.
And for anyone operative to tamper with that. Okay. On that note, we'd like to thank you, Hawa Evelyn Shekara, Country Director, IPAS Nigeria. Thank you for being with us in Good Morning Nigeria today.
Thank you.
We also would like to appreciate Abdurrahim Okpotu Shwaibu, who is Director, Legal and Prosecution at NAPTIP. Thanks a lot for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so that does it for our second topic for discussion this morning. Let's go over now to our sports desk.